Today's story begins nearly 20 years after the Supreme Court decided Roe v. Wade. By 1992, abortion remained one of the most controversial issues in America. That year, Pennsylvania passed a law creating several new requirements for women seeking an abortion. The law required a 24-hour waiting period, informed consent, parental consent for minors, and reporting requirements for abortion providers. It also required married women to notify their husbands before obtaining an abortion, with a few exceptions. Welcome to Once Upon a Case, because the law isn't just for lawyers, it's for everyone. Planned Parenthood, an organization that provides reproductive health services, challenged the law. The organization argued that several of these requirements violated the constitutional right to abortion, recognized in Roe v. Wade. The case eventually reached the United States Supreme Court. The question before the court was whether it should keep, change, or completely overturn Roe v. Wade. On June 29, 1992, the Supreme Court issued its decision. The court reaffirmed the central holding of Roe v. Wade, meaning it continued to recognize that the Constitution protected a woman's right to choose an abortion before fetal viability. However, the court also changed the legal standard. Instead of using Roe's trimester framework, the court adopted the undue burden test. Under this new rule, states could regulate abortion before viability, as long as those regulations did not place an undue burden on a woman's ability to obtain an abortion. Applying that standard, the court upheld most of Pennsylvania's law, including the waiting period and parental consent requirements. However, it struck down the requirement that a married woman notify her husband before obtaining an abortion, concluding that his provision placed an undue burden on the exercise of her constitutional right. For the next 30 years, Planned Parenthood v. Casey became the leading Supreme Court decision governing abortion rights in the United States. That changed in 2022 when the Supreme Court decided Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, overruling both Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey. And that's the story of Planned Parenthood v. Casey. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, watch this case next.